Hey everybody, and welcome to Album IQ. My name's John, and today we're going to be talking about our take on the latest Justin Bieber album. Overall, felt like it was an intimate but polished sort of album. Sonically really good, a lot of kind of heartfelt songs, heartfelt moments, but I feel like towards the end it sort of drops the ball and didn't really stick the landing, as they say. Justin Bieber's latest album feels almost like watching old home videos. It's nostalgic, a little grainy, but still kind of intimate and personal. But just like home movies, it starts to kind of drag on a little bit. By the time you get towards the end of the album, it kind of feels like there's maybe more fluff than substance. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some really good tracks, and we're going to go through all of them, and we're going to talk about what I thought was good, what I didn't like, what I did like, or what we here at Album IQ liked and what we didn't. Overall, it's a good listen. Kid's clearly got talent, I mean, he's an adult now. Justin's clearly got some talent, a really good singer. But when I say it had an opportunity to be one of a really strong album for Justin, in the end, it kind of just felt a little long, felt a little forced, felt like maybe there were a little bit more too many labels hands, like it was kind of a label directed, like a lot of label decisions were being made as opposed to purely artistic decisions being made. From the start, it's warm, it's intentional, it uses some sounds that automatically, at least for people who aren't maybe, born in, if your birthday starts with a 2, your birthday year, maybe it's not as nostalgic for you. But for the rest of us, it brings along some nostalgia. It brings along some almost like a retrospective, introspective vibe with the way the instruments are chosen, the way the songs are conducted, the way they're played. Now, look, Justin had a large writing team on most of these songs, but they're strong. There's some strong songs in there, and obviously the production is top notch. And so as purely as a listen, it's a nice, pure, enjoyable listen, regardless of the quality of maybe speakers or headphones you're using. And again, that's something we'll talk about here. Here at Album IQ, we're a mixture of producers, engineers, music enthusiasts, headphone aficionados, and that's stuff we could ever talk about if anybody was ever interested. But let's just see. A blend of retro sounds with modern polish and a nice blend of textures makes this enjoyable. It's not just a throwback, it's like a curated memory filtered through like modern production techniques. So saturated synths, I don't want to say lo-fi drums because they're not really lo-fi drums, but there's a lot of like acoustic drums, and whether they're samples or not, there's a lot of acoustic drums that give this a nice analog feel. It doesn't feel like a pop album, and I don't think it was intended to be a pop album. And that clarity, that sort of analog emotionality that comes along with real instruments and real performances, blended with this modern take on how great things sound sonically nowadays. We're living in like the golden age of sonically, the way albums sound. It can be seen throughout the record, and it doesn't seem like a byproduct. It seems like an intentional direction that the record was trying to take, and they pulled it off as far as I'm concerned on that part. It starts really good with a strong foundation. The first couple tracks, I'd say the first 4 tracks, they're nice to listen to. They're sonically pleasing, and they definitely set a vibe. I've listened to the album a couple times now. Could I sing you any of the hooks? I could not. The tracks aren't particularly hooky or catchy or poppy, but that doesn't mean that in a car ride I wouldn't put on 3 or 4 of these to just kind of listen to and enjoy. These tracks, they're musically sparse, and what I mean by that is you hear these pop tracks nowadays, they're so dense. There's so many, there's 12 synths, things are wide, things are reverb, things are deep, things are shallow. This is not like that. These feel like performances. These feel like songs. These feel like songs that were performed with an intent and a purpose. So first couple tracks are really good. One of the first standouts is the track Yukon. It's a good track. It's catchy, well produced. It does, however, have this weird effect on Justin's voice where he's kind of got like a pitch kind of lift on his voice. So I don't want to call it chipmunk voice, but his voice is definitely up an octave. This change in character, it's almost like a change in character in this song, and it could be interpreted as a gimmick, but I think it's a little deeper than that. It almost feels like an alter ego. Maybe it emotionally gave Justin a chance to sort of be expressive in a way that he could separate and compartmentalize from himself and just sort of be in a different role. It does deliver authentic emotion, and it could suggest some thematic content and thematic contrast and intention. And maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was meant to like throw a little contrast in there. But it happens really early. It's within the first section of the album where I think it's the most strong as a group. And then shortly after that, it starts to go downhill, but not right away. So Go Baby is another track that's like stripped back and moody, not overly complicated with the instrumentation. It's a clean track. It's got the emotionality. It's got the nostalgia vibe, again, based on the kind of just the instrumentation, the way things were recorded, the way things were EQ'd, the way things were produced. But early on, you start to get this vibe of like filler and kind of, where are we going with this album exactly? So things like, or like tracks like Things You Do, it almost feels like a voice memo. Like, you know, artists like to record a voice memo so they can remember a song. It almost sounds like it was like a quick little idea that was eventually turned into an entire song. And yet it still works for the album. It's working for the album. It still falls in line. And it's another great reminder right off the cut, in case you weren't sure, especially falling out of Yukon, where we use this kind of effect to sort of mask Justin's voice in a way. Things You Do kind of pulls back and just reminds you of the vocal talent that he really is. I don't hear any pitch corrector on this album. I don't. And I know that they say it's the industry standard and everybody uses pitch corrector. I don't think Justin does. I think he's just a really, really strong singer. And you can hear that throughout the album. You can hear this in this song. The mixing engineer did a great job of having that like guitar. It filled out the low end. It's difficult to do this with like clean guitars, distorted guitars too, but the clean acoustic guitar sound, it gives this warmth, it gives this body, but it doesn't step all over the vocal warmth that's still there. So mixing job is fantastic. If anybody ever wants to use this as a reference for mixing kind of clean guitar sounds on top of a vocal centered track, Things You Do is a great place to go. Add it to your reference list. I got another one for you to add to your reference list at some point. There's no sample alerts in this song. I'm not going to be like, sample alert on track 7. There's not. But there are some reference alerts, and this is one of them. So you want a good reference for that? Check this song out. Then we step into like tracks like Butterflies. It unfolds slowly. It gives you time and space to sort of adjust from a little bit more of the tempo that was earlier set in the album. The building provides gravity beyond what just lower frequencies and lower instruments can provide. The contrast with Butterflies and the slow building low end work, it's another point about dynamic structure across the album. It's loose, but there's like a control in the looseness, and this part of the album, I would say the first 6 tracks, especially in my opinion, it feels like the true body of work rests here. There's a track or 2 towards the end that kind of complement and go in line with this. But overall, you'll really catch what I think was the original intention for this album. You'll catch that in the first part of the album. And then what I like to say is playlist pressure creeps in. 6 songs is not enough, right? 7 or 8 maybe is not even considered enough nowadays. And so this playlist pressure where it's like, how long can we keep these people engaged? How many songs can we include? How many different markets can we kind of try to reach out and grab? Now that's the middle of the album, and this is where I feel like it starts to fall short. So Way It Is featuring Gunna. I don't know a lot about this artist named Gunna, but this is where the album starts to take a turn, not necessarily downward, but outward. And again, it's towards that like playlist culture. The feature isn't offensive. I don't dislike the feature. I don't feel like it takes me out of it. I don't feel that way about all the features in this album. Some of the features should have and probably could have been cut, or could have and should have. But it doesn't elevate anything. It's a feature, and you got an extra artist on there, but I don't know what it added. I don't know how it enhanced the album. I don't know how it enhanced the vibe in any meaningful way. I don't see it. It didn't do a lot for me. And I feel like sometimes cameos serve to like anchor a vibe and push boundaries. And then sometimes they're just checking a box to be like, you know, catch a market or catch a, I don't know, catch a group of people or to attract attention. This is what that felt like. I don't feel like the cameo in this case added anything meaningful. And then First Place is another track that kind of recovers things a little bit. It's still beat driven. It has some edge. It has some atmosphere. First Place, it continues the balancing act. Like, so First Place is almost like, it's like a midpoint in the album. This would have still been a good midpoint in the album. It's like a balancing act between the familiarity of the nostalgia vibe that I feel like it was going for, but with the freshness of the modern sound and the modern take on these. I mean, they're technically pop songs, but they're not the typical type of pop you expect from Justin. It continues to serve the idea that you can frame the whole album as like a curated memory, intentionally blurring the lines between places and spaces and sort of giving him room to express himself emotionally, which is what I feel like he was going for. And that's what I feel like he missed, and what I feel like could have been accomplished with a tighter, more edited, more directed direction for this album. And that's exactly highlighted by what comes next. The first skit is called Soulful. Drewski, I don't know too much about him. I know he's like considered like a personality, like a comedy guy. But this skit, along with all the other Drewski skits, they just feel so out of place and unnecessary. It's like trying to hype up a certain, again, market, a certain vibe, trying to hype Justin up in a certain way, but there's no real artistic contribution to it. It doesn't really need there. This is the first red flag that the cohesion of the album is starting to falter. The cohesion of the album is starting to fall apart. You can feel the hands of maybe the marketing people starting to get their fingers in there. Who decided that Drewski should be on the album? Who decided that the skit should be there? Who decided that the skit should be there in this point in the album, and why? Feels out of place, takes you out of the vibe. Definitely a skip for me, and actually kind of makes me not necessarily want to go back to the album that often, unless I were to curate the album in my own way and pick the songs that I thought were good. And again, we keep kind of like trying to jump back into things that are valuable and trying to bring us back to what I feel like was his target goal of this nostalgia and this like introspective, retrospective look on his life. You get that from the vibe, you get that from the skits. The intention is clear. It's just not always effectively executed. And you'll see that as you listen to the album. So Walking Away is another great track. It nails that new nostalgia vibe that they've been threading through the album, especially with the like electric piano and the ambient like reverb guitars. It just like the reverb kind of gives that feeling of looking back and blurred memories and blurred, but the feeling is there. The same way that we all react to our memories. We can't always remember the details, but remember how we feel. The Walking Away captures that. Like, and the way the guitars are kind of EQ'd and reverb, and the way they like kind of float back with reverb and they come to the forefront at certain points, it gives that vibe of floating in and out of memories and kind of re-experiencing things in your life. And so again, that's the intention's there, but it's just, it doesn't come all the way through, especially when you've just been pulled out of it by a skit. Then comes the track Glory. It's another stripped down track that just kind of puts Bieber's vocals front and center. It is a voice memo track, and this, if nothing else, serves to just remind of his pure vocal talent. It's a voice recording. Now, maybe they could have edited to make it sound like that, but to me, it sounds like a real, just like a voice recording he left on a phone or a voice memo. And the kid, I mean, I keep saying kid, the guy can sing. He's a very good singer, and this is just a reminder of the pure talent. When you strip things down the way this album does, but especially this track, it's a way to cut through all the other noise, cut through all the other post-production, cut through pitch corrector that everybody's so intending and using, and it spotlights the things that can't be faked. That pure raw talent, that pure emotionality, the things that have, make artists. We move on to track 12. We're like halfway through the album now, by the way. Track 12, Devotion. It's more of a full mix. It does have some throwback vibes, almost throwback. It almost has like a 70s vibe with how rounded and smooth the bass is, and the slide guitar adds this, I don't know what to say, like almost folky, countryish vibe to it. And they do a good job of like indicating a vibe of loneliness, those like slide guitars, and it almost sounds like wailing or a human voice with the reverb. Again, they're catching a vibe here that sort of plays in with the rest of the album. This is a bit of a stretch, and this is where the album is stretching its boundaries a little bit, and I don't dislike it. It's just, it's starting to feel a little out of place. It's starting to feel like we're meandering, and that's corroborating my earlier point that like the skits and the cameos, it almost feels like we're reaching and we're kind of losing our way. Maybe that was part of the whole vibe, but it just kind of doesn't seem to fit. We move on to Dadz Love. It's a lightweight 90s vibe, talky, like in the 90s, they used to like talk sing sometimes. It leans hard into that aesthetic, more on the sonic aesthetic and the musical aesthetic, less so than the message. So the message is missing here. I don't know what the message is. That's what I mean. Like in the beginning of the album, everything was cohesive. The vibe, the message, it was all very coherent, but we just start to get diffuse and all over the place. And the album's consistently more and more falling apart. And then again, just to make, to throw salt on that wound, boom, we're hit with another Drewski skit called Therapy Session. And this is where you can really start to see the struggle between sincerity, like the sincere vibe and emotion that Justin was trying to communicate and capture, versus the strategy of probably the marketing specialists, the labels and stuff like that. So it struggles here with sincerity versus again strategy with what are probably market pressures versus what Justin's trying to do as an artist. It undermines the album's authenticity, and to me it is an overreach. It's trying too hard to manufacture some kind of specific relatability to certain people that I guess it's trying to gather into Justin's fan base. But I've never heard anybody talk about how much they like Justin Bieber because of how relatable he is. He's not. He's been a star since he was a child. What we love him for is his talent, and as he's grown as an artist, his ability to be emotionally available in some of his work. This is almost trying to convince and tell us that, but anybody who's actively listening doesn't need a Drewski skit to tell us this, and that's why it's patronizing. I don't need to be spoon-fed this. I'm listening. I'm an active listener. The music can speak for itself. This kind of gives the vibe that the music can't speak for itself, and so it kind of undermines the whole intention and vibe of the album to begin with. And that's right before a song called Sweet Spot, which is also kind of underwhelming, especially due to the fact that there's another Drewski interlude that sandwiches this track. So it's like there's just, now it's becoming too much. These Drewski interludes, they don't add anything. They're not meaningful in any way. It's like it feels very forced. And it's the Drewski skit called Standing on Business. I know that's one of his catchphrases, and it shows, you hear a recording of Justin in the past. I just don't know what it adds. I don't know what you're trying to convince me of. It doesn't ring clear. It doesn't ring true, and it doesn't ring authentic for an album that, in my opinion, was geared towards and seated in authenticity and emotional availability. This completely contradicts the initial intention of the album, and I got to tell you, it definitely kind of brought the overall value of the album down for me. Additionally, in Sweet Spot, we also have this Sexy Red cameo. Definitely the worst cameo of the album. I don't know what this brought to the album at all. The production nostalgia is still intentional and even charming. It almost feels like there's like this old Casio keyboard style drum texture, and even the rap cameo itself, it's kind of like cheesy almost and choppy, the way you would expect old school cameos in the 90s or the 80s to be. So it fits the vibe. It matches the aesthetic of the era and the vibe that they were going for. It doesn't rise to the emotional or lyrical level that the rest of the album is calling for. Her lyrics are pointless nonsense. They mean nothing. I remember being offended by them when I first heard them. I don't remember now why I didn't like them. Maybe it's because it felt so out of place for me that it was offensive to me. Maybe it's something that she says. But at the end of the day, Sexy Red's cameo, like I said, doesn't rise to the rest of the emotional level of the album, doesn't provide any emotional meaning, and it definitely doesn't arise to the emotional intent of the album. And it's more like it mimics the past without honoring it in any meaningful way. This is a track that I could have just done completely without, or just get rid of the cameo again. And I feel like this is a label decision, a marketing decision that just didn't need to be there. Now we're getting into what I call the extended ending. Should the album have ended already? By track, I mean, we're on track 17 now, 405. Yeah, the album should have ended a while ago. I could have edited this album down to a nice 10 or 11, 12 tracks that would have captured the vibe, captured the intention, and just been a much more solid album for Justin. But now we're extending into this thing where it's like, what are we doing? And why is it taking so long? And why are we stretching out so far? And why are we adding all this fluff and unnecessary stuff in an album that has some real value to it? Track 405, it continues the previous aesthetic, but without really adding anything new. It does extend the overall journey of the track, but there's really nothing to take from this. The one other thing is that I'll call 405 our second reference alert. So reference alert number 2, track 405, and I'll tell you why. It's only covering familiar ground. It's not doing anything else, but it delivers one of the cleanest and just full, warm bass textures I've ever heard, specifically on this album, but just in general. Like if you're looking for sort of a retro, not in your face, but just full, clean, but just a little bit of like texture so you can hear the notes change. For anybody who wants a reference track for a nice low-end synth bass, 405 is your track. My reference alert number 2, 405. Outside of that, it's clearly mixed with intent. It's clearly produced very well. It's engineered very well. But I would probably add it to the playlist if I was going to edit this album into a playlist for me, but only because I really like the reference, not because of the song itself. So Swag, on the other hand, is an example of where the right features can work when they serve the sound and not just a name. There are some features on Swag. I think there's more than one person, and it does fit the vibe. It does, the features do add something to the track, and this track does seem like it would fit in place, but at this point you're 18 tracks deep. I know some of them were skits, but when everything seems to be kind of not really adding new layers or adding new meaning or adding new depth, it just starts to feel like more and more of the same, and that's where Swag is. Same thing with Zuma House. It feels like deja vu, not a reprise, but like a rehash. By this point, the album's definitely starting to sound like its own echo. Like, why is Zuma House here? Or like, could you have taken that in another track and maybe rewrote a better song or picked one or the other? It's like a show that just has too many seasons. At this point, it's season 9 of The Office, and nobody wants to watch anymore because Michael Scott's gone. And then we move on to the song that, in my opinion, should have ended it. We get to Too Long. In my opinion, Too Long lands with the emotional clarity and the sonic signature that the rest of the album was orbiting the whole time. It encapsulates all the things I think that were the intention artistically of the album and the performances and the tracks and the writing and the engineering and the instrument selection, all that stuff. The irony is that, like, the name of the song is Too Long, and by this time the album has definitely been going on for too long. So at this point, it's hard. If you're listening to this as a full piece of art, a full structure, it's hard to get there because you've been invited into this world. You've been brought into this vibe. You've been, like given an insight into an artist, and then like you're feeling this stuff, and then you get hit with a skit, and then like a pointless cameo, and then a bad cameo, and then a skit, and then a song that's kind of okay, and then another skit. And it's just, it's hard. At this point in my listening, I like this track, but again, it's ironic that the song's called Too Long because it took too long to get there. And by that point, I had some fatigue. Now, if I was going to make the edited version for myself, would Too Long be on there? Most definitely. Unfortunately, it doesn't end the album. It would have been a great ender for the album, even though the name's kind of ironic and funny. Too Long would have been a great ender for the album, but it doesn't. The final track, Forgiveness, is again this, like, I get the lo-fi-ness of it, but it's a recording of an old Christian song, sung by, that I used to hear when I used to have to go to church as a kid, sung by someone else other than Justin. It sounds like it was pulled from an old VHS tape, and I'm just not really sure what the point was. You know what I mean? Like, it's this weird, it's almost like we're trying to, I don't know. It's religious, it's specific, it adds nothing to the album. It connects in no meaningful way to any of the other tracks, other than that it feels old school and lo-fi. And it's just, to me, a strange way to end the album, especially with some of the cameos, some of the lyrical content, some of the other stuff. It just feels very out of place, and this is not how I would have wanted to end the album at all. That being said, let's talk about our final thoughts, final reflections of the things we thought here at Album IQ. Maybe the scattered cameos and the Drewski skits, maybe they're not just outliers. Maybe they're a glimpse into something deeper. Maybe they are showing something else that maybe Justin didn't intend to expose with this album. And what I mean for that is, like, it's a man still searching for meaning, a man still searching for growth, a man who wants to be grounded and wants to be known for things beyond the studio, but has just had difficulty in his life developing who he is and trying to find his way. We all know he's had lots of issues, and that doesn't take away from him as an artist. In fact, I feel like it only adds to him as an artist. But maybe there's a deeper meaning behind all this stuff. Everything has a meaning, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And I'm sure if Justin had put his foot down on some of these things, the label would have had to have backed off because it's Justin Bieber. Who else are you going to get to sing on a Justin Bieber album? While it's thoughtful and it's soulful and emotionally sincere, the album still feels like it's reaching for something deeply personal, but the formulaic cameos and the skits just undercut it, and it's like it becomes a distraction. It's almost like you're having somebody else write your diary for you. It just doesn't make sense. And it pulled me out of the moment, and it pulled me out of the vibe. However, overall, is it worth a listen? Absolutely. There's 2 reference alerts in there that Album IQ recommends if you want to build your reference library for mixing and stuff like that. There's definitely some good tracks, some good things to listen to. Again, not super catchy, not typical of what you expect from Justin, but lots of talent. Lots of talent, songwriting. Probably not the most talented portion of it, but these are groups of, probably over 10 people on some of these songs, but some of the songwriting, the musical production for sure, and then vocally, you can't fault the guy vocally. He kills it vocally. So would I give it a listen? I probably wouldn't revisit the album as a whole myself. But I might take 2 or 3 tracks, throw it into like a vibe playlist, keep it in my music listener app. I'm not going to pick one because I'm not picking sides. iTunes, Apple Music. But don't be surprised if after listening to it, your favorite part about it isn't a specific song. Don't be surprised if you leave listening to the album 1, 2, maybe even 3 times, not memorizing any of the choruses. You still might like a feeling, and you still might enjoy the feeling, and you still might feel comfortable or feel connected to some of the vibes. And so for that, I think it's worth a listen. Overall, I think our album IQ score, we're going to give it out of 5. We're going to give it like a solid 3.5 because there's a lot of good points about it. And it's emotionally available. It's sincere at times, but it's just that whoever directed it didn't do him justice. So out of 5, we'll call it a 3.5 with 2 reference alerts. That's our take on Justin Bieber's latest album, Swag. Drop a comment below, like, subscribe, and let us know if there's anything that y'all would like to hear from us in the future. Thanks a lot.